So we want to ensure that we are looking at this year, now that we are running that format for the first time, with a very clear, untainted point of view. And we will certainly make sure that the fearless draft is still on the table for 2025 as a potential addition to the system.
We are only a few days away from the EMEA Masters Summer Split, and it's been an exciting ride. And today I am in the presence of Maximilian Schmidt, also known as Riot Max, previously the commissioner for the LEC and now the director of LoL Esports in the EMEA region since, I believe, like late 2022 pretty much. So I think, Max, we should probably start with just presentations once again, because obviously since you've left the position of commissioner, maybe people have seen you a bit less than before. So could you tell us everything that you do at Riot as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, first and foremost, for having me and for taking the time. I'm the director for League of Legends Esports in EMEA, as you just mentioned. That means I'm leading the product management teams responsible for both the LEC as well as then obviously the ERLs and EM. So those teams are reporting to me, and we have Artem leading the LEC team with the new title of LEC commissioner that I previously held. And we have Andre, who is taking care of both the ERLs and EM product teams.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, speaking of all of that, obviously, I think the EMEA Masters is a hot topic right now, especially with all the changes that are coming through. And also, as some people might know, this is also going to be the last year of the previous 3-year license for most of the ERLs. So we are entering a new era, I guess, of the ERLs with the new 3-year license. But in any case, in March of this year, we heard from Riot that you guys were planning on installing a new format for the EMEA Masters. And obviously, I mean, now in retrospective, we can tell that it wasn't probably the best format, and a lot of people were maybe not very happy with the changes overall. But before we move on to what is currently the case for the EMEA Masters and the ERLs, could you walk me through what happened at the start of the year, and how did you guys land on that first format that was announced in March?
I can pull the curtain back a little bit on how we think about formats and how often we reiterate, right? So we want to make sure that we are constantly looking at our formats and evaluating what are the things that they do well, where are the areas that they can improve. Sometimes there are other factors, though, that require certain changes, right? As you had already mentioned earlier, we are going into a new season structure in 2025, as per the announcement from John Needham. That meant we knew that going into 2025, EM would naturally have to change to a certain extent as well. So the EL and EM team, they sat together to ensure that we are having a proper solution for 2025 for that new season model. And then we really looked at 2024 as a potential experimentation ground where we can try something that is a bit more out there, that's a bit more new, as well as then potentially use it as a transition period between what was the old system of EM into that potential new system for 2025. That's how we arrived then at the, I would say, not super well received. I'm going to go a step further than you a format of the EM for 2024 summer that we announced early in the year. And while there's not necessarily, I would say, a right or wrong when it comes to format, there's always a lot of trade-offs that you have to make. Specifically, the biggest one for EM is always about representation versus competition, right? You want to make sure, we want to make sure that all the regions are represented and they feel like they are part of that happening across the entirety of the ecosystem. We want the ecosystem to come together in that League of Legends moment. And on the other hand, you obviously want to make sure it's a very competitive tournament still, right? There are a lot of ERL players that are competing for a potential slot as an LEC player. They want to showcase their talent, and you want to make sure that they have a chance to do so. It is always a balance between those, right? Because you can make a reasonable argument, maybe not so much this time around anymore, since Germany has gotten the title with Eintracht Spandau the last time. But for a significant portion of time, France was the #1 region in our ERL ecosystem, and they were the region to beat. And it would have been very reasonable if you just went full out on the competition side to say, hey, actually, half the league or even more of the league gets to participate EM because they're just that good. The league is that powerful. But that goes against one of the mantras that we wanted to focus on, really ensuring that everybody gets to participate in that moment. That being said, I think we didn't do that well. We overcorrected. We went too far on the other side of making sure that there's value behind these slots and overvalued being a first position seed in one of the smaller regions that maybe were not as competitive. That is something that is absolutely valuable feedback. And I think that is something that ultimately is also part of the reason that we went back on the initial idea and the initial pitch that we knew was a bit out there, because ultimately Riot prides themselves on being the most player-focused company on the world. That's what we strive to be. And that means that we have to take feedback obviously very seriously. And we really appreciate everybody who voiced their opinion, whether that's our tournament organizers as partners, whether that's the ERL teams, or then obviously also anybody who reached out on social media.
And I mean, you've already touched upon a lot of the other questions that I had regarding the overall feedback that was around the tournament and all of that. But I would also like to ask to you as well, because obviously you remain like tightly linked with all the ERL tournament organizers as well, right? And how much of like the tournament organizers got to influence this decision in the new format, and also the move to this new format in June that was just announced as well?
So when we think about our ecosystem, we really see it as an ecosystem of partnership. As you mentioned, we have our tournament organizers, most of which we've been working together for years at this point. We see them as part of the ecosystem, and we are in partnership together with them. So every single step of the way, we want to make sure that they are in the loop of why we're making certain decisions, when something needs to change. We want to make sure that they have the ability to, one, raise concerns, two, provide feedback, and three, then obviously also are working together with us in regard to potential implementation. And frankly, the ERL TOs as partners have been critical in shaping the entirety of the ecosystem as it is now today. And EM is naturally a part of that as well, right? While there obviously are certain restrictions and certain requirements that we have for ERL partners, just as much as we have certain restrictions and requirements when it comes to executing and operating EM, we want to make sure that we really treat that as a partnership. And I believe we're doing that for a couple of years already at this point, very successfully with a lot of them. And we want to make sure that we continue on that route to make sure that we can see the ecosystem thrive.
And even if the new format is obviously a big positive, I think, for most people, we've still seen a few drawbacks. For example, I believe we just saw on Twitter some announcement from both the Superliga and the ESLO as well, that they were not going to be hosting offline finals this year due to the change in calendar that was a bit last minute. But I would like to ask as well, like, what do you think of these drawbacks, and were they considered as well in like pulling the switch on this new format?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, right? Like usually when it comes to formats, there is no right or wrong. There's a bunch of trade-offs, and you have to make a decision in regard to what you evaluate and value more, right? Specifically in this instance, part of the reason that we didn't initially go with the 2025 plan already in 2024 were exactly these considerations, right? We wanted to be a bit more tame. We wanted to be a bit more flexible when it comes to scheduling. A 60+ team event requires a lot of people power, and it requires a lot of scheduling bandwidth as well, right? And it takes a big chunk out of the calendar that makes it difficult for certain other events to work in parallel as otherwise they would have been able to. That is something that is not ideal for this year in particular, and that is net by the nature of making that shift and change, right? Obviously, we've been working together with all the partners throughout that entire process to ensure that everybody's in the loop and about the trade-offs that we're making. For 2025, we obviously expect that we will have more leeway and we have more time to plan accordingly. That is something that is by the nature of the relatively last-minute change this time around, obviously not possible.
Again, on the comp op side, I think something that has been in the spotlight for most people right now has been the rise of the fearless draft format, which has been implemented in the NACR and also in the LPR, I believe, and even is going to be making its debut in an international tournament next year, as far as I know. So I think a lot of people are expecting this new format to be rising more and more as the year go, and obviously we are not seeing it in the EMEA Masters this year. Has there been considerations towards potentially implementing this in summer and maybe 2025 as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Fearless Draft is very, very exciting. There are obviously various iterations of Fearless, so we always have to talk a little bit, okay, which version of Fearless are we actually talking about? Mm-hmm. I would say generally the concept of bans persisting or played champions persisting and then being removed from a pool and going deeper into champion pools, seeing more champion diversity, that is something that's very exciting, right? It's also more akin to the experience that most people would have at home, right, when they queue up for their game. So it brings the esport and the game closer together, which I think is really, really awesome. Why didn't we do it then? When I praise it so much, why did we do it for this year? The truth is that we already made a lot of changes for this year, right? So we want to ensure that we are taming or tempering ourselves a little bit, and that we're also not tainting the data too much, right? Like, I know everybody's super excited about the new format. I am too, for EM, and I really am happy that it is so well received. But we still have to see how it goes, right? That also means we still have to evaluate how does it work operationally. It's the biggest tournament that we've had in that regard so far. So there will be a lot of things that we have to worry about when it comes to execution. And we also have to receive then obviously how the players are reacting when they actually see the event, because perception can change over time naturally. So we want to ensure that we are looking at this year, now that we are running that format for the first time, with a very clear, untainted point of view. And we would certainly make sure that the Fearless Draft is still on the table for 2025 as a potential addition to the system.
I think just one more question I have on the compost side as well. We've seen in the LCS that the North American region has been putting more emphasis on competing on the live patches as well, and trying to diminish this difference between playing like as a viewer and playing as a pro player, right? And in the EMEA region, it's still something that has not been yet implemented. And I think it's something that is going to be felt this EMEA Masters as well, because as we saw on Twitter, said by a few figures, for example, I saw that like some leagues like the NLC are going to be playing their finals on the 14.13 patch, I believe, and the EMEA Masters is going to be running on the 14.15, which is a 2 patch difference, and is a bit weird for the teams competing and also maybe for the viewers as well. Is this something that you also considered? Maybe just didn't have the time to work this through properly with all the changes?
So I think there's 2 questions there, right? Like the one question is like, hey, how satisfied are we with the delta of patch launching and tournament implementation? For that specifically, I would say that is something we're constantly looking at. And specifically, I want to also shout out the LCS for trialing that. I think that's really, really cool. And we want to learn a lot from their trial and understand how well did that go. As per usual, there are upsides and downsides, so we want to consider those when we go into 2025. When it comes on specifically to EM, remember what I said about trade-offs? It's the same thing, right? Like we either play on a patch that is very old, that makes it difficult the further the tournament goes on for people to connect to this and understand, because major shifts and changes would have happened, or we put teams through a more challenging start of the tournament, where then they are in a position, obviously, where they have to pivot more quickly from an older patch to a newer patch. The benefit is that we expect that at the end of the tournament, we actually have a better competition if we go with the newer patch, because it's more easy for teams to find scrim partners for an extended period of time. Solo queue practice is significantly better for the players that are able to participate on a patch that is closer to the reality that they're playing on the tournament environment, right? So again, I'm not saying either way is perfect. I'm saying it's a trade-off decision, and I believe that we made the right one in this regard with going with the newer patch. And frankly, if in doubt, and if there's a reasonable balance on both sides, in general, there should be an advocacy for the more recent patch, simply because that also improves the ability of the viewer to be able to follow the action and follow the competition, as well as I said earlier, improves the competition towards the back end of the life cycle of it.
Moving on to another topic, I think something that has been, it wasn't really publicized very well so far, but we've seen that actually Webedia is going to be coming in as partly new organizers for the EMEA Masters with Summer Onward. And Webedia, for people who don't know, are the people that organize the LFL, for example. And I would like to ask, first of all, what are the reasons behind this change? Because now they're going to be coming in, helping you guys out, kind of like ESL did back in the day with the EU Masters at the very start, right? Obviously, I think like one thing that most people could see as one of the reasons was potentially the layoffs at Riot in January, and maybe have those impacted this decision as well?
Again, multiple questions. I start with the last one, and then I work my way through the rest.
Of course.
So the layoffs and Webedia taking over are not connected whatsoever. That is a decision that we've already been working on together with Webedia for a significant portion of time. As you mentioned already, and that's going to be a nice segue into the rest of the question, we have the origin of EM is actually being operated by a partner. And part of the reason that we took that on as Riot is that we felt that we could create a better product for the fans and for the ecosystem by doing it in-house and by creating that new platform. And then we did the rebranding, obviously, and all these additional things on top. We are now in the fortunate position that we have a fantastic partner in the form of Webedia, and they've been a long-term partner of ours. They do incredible work in the LFL. We're very, very happy with them. And the amount of fandom that they're generating in the French market is incredible. Their product looked fantastic. And now we can go back to how it was initially conceptualized, that we actually give the ecosystem to the partner as part of our overall licensing. As you already mentioned, right, we run all the ERLs via licensing systems, and the same was conceptualized also for EM. So we're now in the fortunate position that we have a fantastic partner that is eager to take on that additional responsibility. And we've already been working together with them in spring as well. So, and I think they've done a really, really good job. And I'm very, very excited to see the summer iteration of EM. And I know that they also are super keen on seeing how the new format shakes out and how things are going. And yeah, there's a lot to be excited about, I would say, for the next EM iteration.
Yeah, and going into 2025 as well, I mean, as we already mentioned, it's going to be a new license cycle for the ERLs. And obviously, we are seeing some large-scale changes to the global EMEA, the global esports circuit, rather, in all esports. How do you think the ERLs are going to be adapting to this new change? And or can we expect as well, like, the ERLs to move to 3-split format as well?
So I cannot share too many details regarding exactly how things will look like in 2025. What I can share is that there will be some changes. As you already mentioned, we're going to a 3-split structure across the globe. We are adding a third international event. That naturally means there has to be some kind of shift or change, even if it's just schedule. On the ERL and EM level as well. Otherwise, the system just wouldn't work as it currently does. We are still in the process of working together with our partners through the entirety of that structure. So that's why I cannot comment on that quite yet to that level of detail. More than happy to commit to that there will be some changes. How exactly those will look like, we will make sure that we keep everybody posted together with our partners as soon as we have them locked in.
That aside, I mean, obviously, again, we are moving to a new license cycle for the ERLs, but it's been a very interesting time, I think, because obviously the ERLs remain a very interesting and just very cool product in general, right? For the EMEA, oh my God, I have some issues with that word, I swear. But for the global structure in Europe, pretty much, it's a very good product. But we still seen some issues pop up in the last few years and some deterioration, maybe like on the side of viewership that has been diminishing in some ERLs. Obviously, not the case for leagues like the LFL, right? And also, we've seen a lot of organizational turnover as well, with a lot of orgs that leave and come and go, and pretty much it's just not very stable in the ERLs currently. So I would like to ask as well, how is Riot currently seeing the general health of the ERL system, and what is Riot doing as well to potentially help mitigate these kind of issues in the future?
It's a fantastic question. When it comes to sustainability, it's frankly on the forefront of everybody's thinking. That includes Riot, that includes all the ERL partners, and that obviously also includes all the teams that are participating in all the ERLs. So naturally, when we are now looking at the new license cycle for the next year, we want to ensure that we are doing what's best for the entirety of the ecosystem in the long run. That means we are helping the partners with certain regulations and shifts and changes to our requirements, where we make it a lot easier for them to be sustainable. We are also working more closely together with them to ensure that we are all on a path that is sustainable for the long-term future. And the good news is that we are on a fantastic pathway there. I'm very optimistic when it comes to the future of the ecosystem. Our partners are all excited about the future of the ecosystem, and they're also eager to continue to work with us. So I'm very, very positively looking into the future for the next years. And when it comes to the turnover of the teams, maybe also something to briefly touch on. To a certain extent, that's expected, right? It is something that is natural. It has happened on the LEC side, as it happened on the ERL side, as it has happened across the regions. To a certain extent, ultimately, these are businesses. Businesses need to be run, and businesses need to be run profitably. Otherwise, they have no reason to exist. They can run break even for a certain period of time, and they can also run a loss for a certain period of time, but there should be a pathway towards sustainability and toward profitability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That is something that, depending on how you approach that as a business, can work out one way or the other. And that's why it's very hard for me to comment now, from Berlin on the entirety of the ecosystem, because it really depends on the individual circumstances of that business. What is critical for us, though, is that we are both setting up the tournament organizers to be sustainable, which I think we're going to be in a very, very good spot for with the new license that we're going to create, because we're making significant shifts and changes to make it better and more easy to be sustainable in the ecosystem, as well as then obviously also on the team side that a framework exists where TOs can work together with their teams and ensure that on a regional level, on the local level, they're also setting up the opportunity for those businesses to be sustainable. That doesn't mean that every single one will be, but there should be a more reasonable chance. And that's something that we're going to continue to reiterate to make it better to be in the ecosystem and be a part of it.
I see that we are kind of running out of time. Do you have time for one more question, maybe?
Go for the last one.
So obviously this is a bit of an oddball question, but in North America, we've seen that the New American League in 2025 are going to be adding this guest spot to the LCS, or like the new league pretty much. And we've seen the rise of orgs like Carmine Corp, Giants, which is now Giant X, Heretics, and even Koi that all came from the ERLs. So just quickly, has there been consideration of potentially adding a guest spot to the LEC, for example, in the future?
Always a consideration. It would require an entire overhaul of the ecosystem, though. So I want to make it very clear there's no current plans to shift or change that. That is something that we would have to work together with the LEC teams as well as all our partnered ERL TOs to find a way for. Currently, that's just against the philosophy of the ecosystem, right? Like the philosophy of the ecosystem is a replacement for back in the day, the Challenger Series. Yeah. That means you have regional competition that feeds into EM, and you have a player pathway from the ERLs to EM to the LEC. If you're changing that equation and giving guest slots to ERLs, suddenly it's not about transitioning talent and having talent move over into the LEC. You don't see that rise to pro that we've now seen for a couple of years from various different players and across different organizations, which I'm super happy about, because people would hold on to their players. They would want to make sure that they have the best roster possible to make sure that they have that chance of competing in the LEC. And while I get the appeal of that promotion relegation, bring it back thematic, that would mean that we would have to drastically revisit the entirety of the ecosystem. And I want to make it very clear, currently there are no plans to do that. We're in a long-term partnership with the LEC teams. We're focused on sustainability on both sides of the ecosystem, both for the LEC as well as the ERLs and EM. We're also very happy with the current position of EM, how well it's been received after the latest changes. We're super excited to host EM at the roadshow in Munich. Tickets are selling like hot potatoes. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
They sell like they're very desirable. We have thousands of fans signing up for that finals, and we don't even know who's going to play yet. It's incredible. It's going to be most likely the biggest roadshow that we've ever had. I'm super excited about it. Everybody should be excited about it, but we are not in a position where we are critically making major shifts and changes to the ecosystem, which this would be, simply because we have TOs that are sustainable and are working towards being sustainable. We have an LEC that is working well, and we want to make sure that we continue with that system for as long as that is feasible.
Perfect. Well, in any case, I know that I'm very excited for the roadshow in Munich as well, and maybe I'll see you there even. We'll
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a very, very interesting interview and a lot of very interesting topics. So again, thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll get to talk again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching this video and enjoying the content we produce. As a reminder, both the EMEA Masters Finals and the season finals of the LEC are heading to Munich this year, and right now you can grab your own tickets to attend the events. As a reminder, on August 30th there will be the EMEA Master Finals, and then on the 31st and September 1st there will be the LEC semifinals and grand finals. So hopefully we'll see you there. Don't forget to grab your own tickets.